I keep thinking about when we were kids and how they used to make us practice hiding under our desks in case of an atomic bomb.
Yeah, duck and cover.
Well, folks, this is a map. Do you know how to use one of these? I hope you do, because one day your GPS may not be around to help you out. Hello and welcome back to the Duck and Cover Movie Podcast. My name is Jeremy Anderson, and as you can see, I am soloing it today. My brother has been under the weather for the last couple of weeks, so I have gone ahead and I'm just going to take over the reins here for this episode. And we're going to go ahead and get us back into Jericho. We are watching Season 1, Episode 5, which is called Federal Response. This was aired on October 18th of 2006. Let's see. So we're going to go ahead and start the episode with... sorry, I'm looking at my notes right off screen. Okay, so it is morning. And Jake, Eric, Mimi, Stanley, and Jimmy are all at Mary's bar. It looks like they've been up all night. They've been playing cards. They're just hanging out, having a good time. Mimi believes that she can sense things about people, so she decides that she wants to tell us more about Jake. So she starts making up all these things about being the prom king and all this stuff, and Stanley actually turns back and says, "No, I think he beat up the prom king," which probably for Jake that makes sense. So as they're sitting there playing, and they're kind of starting to probably think about going home or whatever, the power turns back on. Music starts coming out of the jukebox, lights come on, and they have to go and unplug the jukebox, because what's funny is normally that's on at night, so it's loud, so when it's silent in the morning and that comes blasting on, you're gonna get deafened, so they go and unplug it. As soon as they do, the payphone is ringing, and then we start switching to a lot of different other places. Obviously the power is coming back on for everybody else, and everybody's telephones are ringing as well. So they pick it up, and they hear that this is Secretary Walsh from the Department of Homeland Security, and it's just a repeating message, telling everybody to please stand by. When they go to turn the TV on, you have the emergency alert system message that pops up, and it's got the beep that's going. So that's the opening, and then we cut to Jericho, and the message that's in there is a fire. We'll get to that later. All right, so things move on, and now we're at an internet cafe, and Skylar is trying to connect to email, which is not working. And Allison comes up, and she asks, well, have you tried typing in the IP address directly? So she starts typing in an IP address that starts with 827, the first octet, which it obviously doesn't exist, so because they can't go and put a real IP address onto the screen on a TV show. That's like when they're dialing phone numbers, it's always 555. So she tries to type that in, and it just bounces right back with a message, sort of like what's going on in the TV, saying please stand by. So they're not able to get out, and nothing's able to come in. So Jake heads home, And let's see here. So mom is there. So him and mom sit down and they start talking real quickly about, hey, now that the power's back, are you going to stay with us? Or are you going to be heading back out again? And they kind of start going into a little bit more, about the things that forced Jake out of town. We'll actually get more into, we'll hear a little bit more about that in the next episode of 902. But for now, mom is really worried about, what is Jake going to do? Is he going to take off again? And she's just basically telling him, look, you need to go talk to dad. You need to tell him what it is that's going on. So Jake is really hesitant about that. And it doesn't really want to get into everything that happened. And this is more about, so, Jake's dad already knows, like why he left town, but Jake is hesitant about talking about the things that happened for the 5 years that he was gone. So that's what it is that she's referring to, that you need to talk to him about that. And he just doesn't want to. As they're standing there talking, the lights begin to flicker. And, Jake on the spot says, oh, it's a power surge, and goes running out. So as that's happening, we switch to the school library. And Heather and Emily are at the school, or at the library with the school kids. They're out having a field trip. And as the power begins to surge, like one of the little transformers or whatever it is that's on top of the library pops, and one of the lines comes off, and it's still got electricity flowing through it, so it's live on the ground bouncing around. There's another spike, and Emily is thrown back and knocked unconscious. And Heather tries to start giving her, or at least just tries to start waking her up. I don't think she knows CPR all that much. But she calls for, she's calling for help, and she's trying to get people to come and help her. Eventually, probably just within a few minutes, because it's a small town, April and EMS show up, and they start working on her. The fire department's also, they're on their way. So we switch now to Hawkins, to his house, and he opens up his ruggedized laptop, and turns on the internet, and he gets the same message about emergency alert system, and please stand by. So he starts typing in an IP address that starts with 29. Now apparently 29, and I don't have all the notes in front of me, but apparently 29.000 probably all the way to 29.255.255.255 is all actual government set of IP addresses. So he starts typing in 29.203.38, and that's where it stops. Obviously, you need a fourth for an IP address, so they can't show that, but they show that what he's typing in is almost real. So he gets a web page that comes up that's apparently in Turkish, but he's going to start. He clicks on something and it asks for a passcode, so he whips out an American Express card, and of course, it's got the number that starts with 5. And then what he ends up doing is he flips the card over, and now all those numbers become other looking numbers and letters. So that's his code that he's going to use. So he starts typing that in. So now we go back to Eric is now at the library, because he's with the fire department. And they go to they're going to turn on water to start putting out the fire, because the fire is starting to erupt over the top of the library. But then they figure out that the fire was electrical, so they need to turn the power off first before they do anything else. So Eric radios in to his dad, who's at town hall. And, excuse me. Eric radios in to his dad, who's at town hall, and tells him, "Hey, we need you to turn off the power grid to the library so we can start putting out the fire." So he goes and does that. At the same time, they discover that one of the kids is actually still in the building. She had gone in to rescue, one of the kids said that she had ran in to rescue Alice, which is the book Alice in Wonderland. So Heather had run in to go get her. And then Eric finds out from Emily, because Emily is kind of conscious. And so he puts on a fireman's jacket and he goes and heads in, and his wife, she's there as well. And so she's just, got to remember that she still doesn't know about the affair, right, at this point. So he doesn't, she doesn't know about the affair yet. So of course she's trying to get him to stay. Don't go into, but he's just like, nah, I gotta go do this. So he goes running in, and he goes after Heather and the girl. All right, so we're moving on. Jake is over at the library as well, and when they turn on the water to start putting out the fire, the water stops. And they figure out that it's because the power was shut off. The pump to the to where to get the water there is also on the same grid. So him and Stanley take off to go and get that turned on. So of course Jake on the spot. Jake knows exactly where that is, and so they go running in. They go to start trying to turn the crank to get it going. But it's stuck in place. So Stanley runs out and grabs his rifle out of the cab of his truck, and they go and they shove that in and use that as leverage to open up the valve and get the water flowing. So and of course Jake knows exactly what part to touch. The water's flowing. Okay, there we go. So he takes the scope off of Stanley's rifle, goes up onto the roof. So he goes and uses the scope, and he starts looking around. He sees the library. He's able to see that the water is flowing, that they're able to get everything going. He starts looking around more. He sees that there's a fire over by the trailer park, and then I think he sees another one too. So he's relaying all this to Stanley, and then he looks again, and he sees out in the backyard, Hawkins has moved out there, and he's got this little portable satellite dish, and so he's on his laptop. So Jake's watching him, and of course, Hawkins is just working. Then he decides to look around. I'm being looked at. So now that now one knows about the other, they know a little more. So Eric. So we switch back, and Eric is he's still moving around through the library. He's found Heather and the girl. They've shut themselves into a room, and they're staying there for the moment, trying to get trying to stay safe, trying to stay as low as they can so they're not sucking in as much smoke as they should be. Okay, so once they get the water on and going, the sprinklers overhead turn on, so Eric is able to get Heather and the girl out. So then we switch over to Jake. Jake is over at a house with that's also caught fire, and he's got this huge length of hose and a couple of other things. So he's getting ready to head over, and of course Hawkins shows up, and he's just like, "You need help?" So So he says, yes, jump in. So they head over to this house. And so there is a house across the street that is not burning, but does have a pool. So, of course, he knows, that he knows where every pool is because, he's Jake on the spot. Runs this long length of hose, plugs it in. They can't get power, because the power is out, probably still within the same grid section. So Hawkins disappears, comes back a few minutes later, and he pulls up with his minivan. And, because the minivan has a power outlet in the back, so they plug in, they get the water pump to turn on, and they start working on putting the fire out on that house. So eventually, for the most part, they get that one house out. They get the library fire put out. We come to find out that the fire in the mobile home park just decimated everything. But we'll get to the reasoning for that in just a few minutes. So all of that's done. So we go back to, and I'm probably getting a couple of these parts out of order, but it's still the same storyline. So we switch back to Hawkins, who's back on his computer in the house, because he doesn't want to be seen. And he's actually pulling up information on Jake. So, he has access to, the secret internet, the servers and different things that did not go out. And so he's looking up information on Jake, and he finds out that Jake's passport's been flagged. And it lists, Honduras, Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, Qatar, Peru, and Guatemala. So, he spent a lot of time in South America. And so he's flagged from going to probably any of those countries. So we switch back, and so Eric and April's house has burned down. And so they go in, they're trying to gather up all their stuff. And Eric finds the divorce papers that she has drawn up. And she says, look, I did want a divorce at one point, but I don't anymore. So, of course, he still has not said anything about his affair. So he's just kind of playing it off like, oh, okay. Because she says, it's been a difficult time for us, but, I don't feel that way anymore. So we switch now back to Mary's bar. And this is where the episode's going to wrap up. You've got almost everybody in there at this point. And so everybody's gathering because they're gathering there because Mary's bar has a satellite dish, so it's picking up other signals rather than just the one that's trying to come through the TV. And so everybody's piling in. The mayor, his wife come in, Jake comes in, and then Eric comes in with April. Mary sees this and she gets all but what ends up happening is it's now switched to the seal of the U.S. Department of State, and it's got the podium and the microphone, and so somebody's getting ready to speak, and so they're all standing there and they're waiting for this to happen, and then the power goes out again, and this time they hear there's rumblings and a lot of different, and like all the glasses, they're all shaking. So everybody goes running out, and they all go pouring into the streets, and then the camera pans back to everybody looking up, and there's actually two missiles in the air that have been fired from the United States that are on their way somewhere. And that is all we see. And the episode ends there. Okay, so here we go now with episode 6, which is called 902. This episode aired on October 25th, 2006. And the message that's going to go off in the Morse code is the EMP hits. So we start this episode off in the same place that we left off the last one, which is where everybody was outside of Mary's bar. And there are 2 missiles that are going off in the air. And right now, at this point, everybody's kind of chaotically talking about, is this nuclear war? Who's doing this? Why is this happening? So Mayor Green mentions that the closest military base, or the closest place with missiles, is in Wyoming, and that's about 100 miles away. And so he mentions that this could be this could be the Americans retaliating, or who knows, it could be somebody else who may have gotten in and have decided to just send the missiles out. We then switch back to Hawkins' home. He has gathered all of his family in the basement. He's gathering all of his family to the basement. He goes down to his computer and he types in a question, whose missiles are these? And there's a response that comes back and says that that person is compromised, but we don't know who that is. We then switch back to outside the bar, and there is a small sort of explosion that goes off in the night sky. I realize, nowadays, they definitely could have made that explosion a little bit bigger. I think I'm a little more noticeable because, honestly, if you're not paying attention to it, it's just this little circle and that's it. But that is an EMP that goes off, electromagnetic pulse. That happens when a nuclear bomb goes off in way up in the upper atmosphere. So all power goes out again, and anything with a circuit board has just basically gotten fried. Unless you have a ruggedized computer. So it fades out, and it says, fades out, comes back, and now it says 2 weeks have gone by. And we see there's a clock in town that says 9:02. So basically, all clocks, anybody that has a watch that was working, now it's just stuck at 9:02. So we go to outside of Grace's Market, and there's a bunch of teenagers basically playing baseball, or trying anyway, with a bunch of dead cell phones. They're tossing them, and kids just sitting there swinging, hitting them. And and then one actually ends up going through the window to Gracie's Market. And Dale comes out and, starts yelling at one of the ones that's there. It's like, hey, what are you doing? And, of course, Jake is there. Jake is everywhere. When in doubt, put Jake in the scene, and he'll just... So he kind of confronts the kid and was like, hey, weren't you in trouble a couple weeks ago? Basically, nobody's caring. Things are kind of starting to go downhill, I think, in town. We switch back to town hall, and, because the what is left of the police force is very small, a lot more complaints are coming in, and they just cannot keep up. Even though they've gone and a couple episodes ago started asking for volunteers, unfortunately, it's still not enough. So you see Eric is, he's just frantically writing down everybody's complaint. You've got 2 or 3 people that are all in there just kind of yelling out their problems all at once. So, of course, he's trying to get all that information. All right, so we switch back to Mary's bar. And So here we are, 6 episodes in, and we get introduced to our first character that was not in town, at least as far as we know, when all this has started. And this is Mitchell Caffrey. And Mitchell's going to be in this show for several episodes. So his introduction is I like it. He's at the bar. He comes walking in, and he's asking for something cold. Mary's there, and she's like, "Look, we haven't had anything cold for a while." Jake is there. When in doubt, put Jake in the episode. Put him in the location. He'll be just fine. So of course he's having a drink, and Mitchell and Jake have a history, have a past of being bad boys in town. Mitchell's just trying to hey man, where you been? What's going on? But Jake's trying to get him out, and so they're kind of going back and forth. And Hawkins walks in. Of course, he walks in, so he's trying to figure out what's going on. He's able to sort of get Mitchell to leave, just okay, you're done, go out. But that's now something that Hawkins is thinking about, is you've got Mitchell and Jake, and the way that these two were interacting, they have a history, so he's figured that out. So we switch back now to the Green farm, and it's brought up that the mayor's flu is getting worse. April says that if she had better medicine, she could treat him, but they just don't have it at the clinic. So that's a comment for another episode. That's I think the next one, 1 or 2 episodes down the road, is where they're going to focus on getting medicine for him, but that'll come up later. So we switch back to, actually, so sorry, I'm reading my notes, and of course I'm trying to get myself caught up. So now we head to the Richmond farm. So Stanley, Bonnie, and Mimi are all there. So Mimi comes up and says, "Hey, you still owe the government what, 180 plus whatever $1,000, something like that, for taxes." She says, "I tell you what, you let me room here, you let me stay here, and I will deduct, my, sort of rent from the money that you owe the government." So of course Stanley, is just kind of playing this off like, "Hey, I got a free person that'll help me work." Of course Mimi being, Mimi, she's just kind of babbling. She turns around, she's looking around, and there's all these insects on the ground, and she starts, screaming, freaking out. So Stanley looks, and he's got this concerned look on his face. He goes over to the corn, pulls one of the husks off, and pulls it open, and finds that there's worms in there. So he's having a problem with his crop. So that's something now that he's got to deal with. We switch back to the farm. Gail's there, and of course Jake's there. So they're outside the barn, and Jake heads off, I think, to go get water for their horses. The next thing you hear is neighing of horses, and all of a sudden, all the horses come running out. Gail standing there right in the middle on the of the driveway, so she ends up dropping to the ground as all the horses are running past her, and we actually see 2 other guys. We see 2 guys on the horses as they head out. Jake comes running out. He sees what's going on, and even though we don't see his face, he says that, well, that one of those guys was Mitchell. So now Jake's going to go after him. I believe we're still at the Green farm, and so Jake has a gun, and he says that he's going after Mitchell. The mayor is awake and alert enough that he takes the gun away from him. It's just like, look, don't go after this guy. And there's a little bit more of a discussion about Mitchell being part of the reason why Jake got in trouble years ago, and also talking about the arrest that happened at the time. Again, they don't really go into it, but they just sort of allude to it. So there's a little bit. So now you know a little bit more, just a little bit more about what's going on between the two of them and what happened to him years ago. So we switch back to Stanley. So Stanley is realizing that he needs pesticide. So he goes back to Gracie's market. And of course she happens to have, several 5-gallon barrels of pesticide. All the food was sold, all the shelves were emptied out, but they didn't take the pesticide. Anyway, so he comes in, he's like, look, I need this pesticide. How about I give you 20 bushels for all the pesticide, because he's going to need it to keep the crop going. But she's just like, you know what? Let's split the harvest. And he's just like, nah, I'm not having that yet. I'm not giving you, half of my corn. And this is where it's just, with Gracie, it's kind of, I don't want to say questionable, but she's just an odd duck. I don't know. I just always felt that she was just a little off. Not crazy or anything, not goofing the head, but I think sometimes she tends to reach a little too far, and then kind of, sometimes her hand kind of gets slapped. But obviously that didn't happen here. But this is just one of those where she's just like, no, I'm going to reach further than I probably should. So he leaves. So now we switch to Stanley going and talking to the mayor and Gail. And, and so he's saying, look, I need this pesticide. And so the mayor actually feels that it actually probably would be okay for, him to share the crop to the town, because they're going to need it. But, Stanley is just focused on, him and Bonnie, and, it's his, right? So he wants to actually just make sure that he keeps it all. So he's not listening to the sheriff, to the mayor, and he's just not having any of it. He's like, I'll figure out what I'm going to do on my own. So he leaves in a huff and takes off. So Jake figures out where Mitchell took the horses. So he heads over there, finds horse tracks in the gravel, and actually finds where the horses are. And he goes in. He's going to try and get them out. Mitchell ends up actually coming up behind him and knocks him out. When he comes to, they start talking about. Mitchell starts talking about how his best friend got shot, that he ended up in jail, and Jake was involved. So Jake ends up threatening Mitchell, and then Mitchell turns around and says, "Now there's the Jake I knew." He's actually able to get one up on Mitchell. Jake turns, grabs, he goes after him. Jake ends up, Jake ends up getting thrown. Mitchell turns the gun, and just before he ends up getting shot, Eric and one of the cops, Jimmy, show up and arrest Mitchell. Or no, excuse me. They show up, but Mitchell actually gets up on a horse and takes off. He's not going to get arrested until later. But Dale and this kid Sean were both there. So Dale was, I don't want to say working with Mitchell, but I think that was kind of the direction it was starting to go in. So those two actually end up getting arrested. So they are taken back to town. So we switch back to Gracie's market, and Gracie figures out, Gracie sees that all the pesticide containers are now gone. So she ends up going to town hall and puts in a complaint. Bill, one of the other cops, ends up showing up at the Richmond Ranch, and obviously he says, I have to, somebody put it in a complaint, so I have to look into this. There's no warrant or anything, but he just starts looking around the barn, starts looking around for the pesticides, and saying, like, look, I didn't take this stuff. So they almost start getting into a fight, but Mimi's just like, hey, just calm down. So he ends up, the cop and Bill ends up walking off, going and doing his search, doesn't find anything, and then he ends up leaving. But just after he leaves, we find out that Mimi gave her watch to some kids. It's like this, I don't know, diamond crusted, I don't know, watch or Rolex, something or other. Of course, it doesn't work, but who knows? Who cares? And so she used that to bribe some kids to go and steal the stuff. So she has it. It's all stored away somewhere. And all they got to do is go pick it up. So we switch back to town hall. Dale and Jake are sitting there talking about Dale starting to get mixed up with Mitchell. But he does say that he knows where Mitchell's probably hiding out, because all of that food from episode, I think, 2 or 3, that Dale had found in that train car had all been put into a truck and was being stored somewhere. So Dale knows where that's at. So he's going to tell Jake where that's at. Just before that scene ends, Skylar comes in, and she's like, of course, he's not you're not a cop, he's not arrested. And Jake's just like, look, I'm just talking to him. I'm not a cop. I'm going to release him off. Off he goes. So we switch back to. Okay, so we switch back to Hawkins' basement, and Allison is down there. She's wandering around, looking in his little hidey hole portion of the basement, and she sees the map that he was playing with early on, and she sees that there's pins in Philadelphia, Atlanta, Detroit, Chicago, Dallas, Minneapolis, Kansas City, Denver, Seattle, and San Diego. So the camera quickly pans across the map, but we do see the whole map, so we know now where all those bombs went off. She also finds a gun in a case, and she finds the ruggedized laptop that's working. So just before she's getting ready to leave, dun dun dun, Dad shows up. We switch. So Dale leads Eric and Jake back to the barn where all the food is supposed to be, but when they go in, it's empty. They're upset now, because Dale's like, look, there was a ton of food in here, but it all been moved. So they hear somebody walking around outside and find out that it's Mitchell. So they end up, getting the better of Mitchell, and they're able to arrest him. So they end up taking him back to town. So we resolve the little squabble between Stanley and Gracie. Stanley shows her where all of the pesticide is, and all is forgiven. Everybody's happy. We go back to Stanley's farm, and he's actually getting ready to burn the crop because if he can't get rid of the worms, the harvest is not going to be any good. So he's going to burn it. But what ends up happening is everybody from town shows up, and they all go in and start helping him to harvest the food because now is the time that he's got to harvest it. And they also discuss the fact that the food, actually, I think this was discussed earlier, but they say that the corn is fine, because of the rain from Denver, that the husks kept the corn safe. So everybody's there. Gail ends up bringing Dale and Sean to the farm, so as part of like rehabilitation for being arrested. So everybody is out there gathering all the stuff, and so it's basically just kind of wrapping up that part of the storyline, is that all this food is going to get saved. So the last thing that we see is Mitchell's in a jail cell, and on the bench where he's at, it says, "Screw this town, Jake Green," and then in quotes, 92. So this just kind of shows that this is where Jake was arrested, and he actually spent time in the jail for whatever it is that he did. Jake actually comes in, and the only light that is in there is a lantern that's hanging on the wall, so that Mitchell can see. So Jake comes in, opens the door, takes the lantern, and Mitchell's like, hey, he's going to come for me. He's going to come looking for me. But, they don't discuss who that is, but we'll find out in the next episode. And so Jake closes the outer cell door, and he walks off. And that is how the episode ends. So we are now, 6 episodes into the show, into the series, and we still got quite a bit to go. So Jason should be back for the next episode. So again, I just wanted to thank everybody for tuning in, for watching all the way through to the end. And I really do hope that you're enjoying watching this. If you are, please give a like and a comment, and let us know. I try to do my best to respond to the comments when I see them. And if I don't see it right away, just give me a little bit of time, and I'll do my best to get back to it. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining in, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye, everybody.